Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. The video today is all about making the most of time. As we know, time is our most precious commodity, and at any time our time can be lessened, taken away from us, or not used in purposeful ways to benefit how long we actually have. So I really hope that this video hits home with a lot of you today about how you may need to look at how you're spending your time and where you can make some changes to benefit the time that you have. So let's get started. So let's think about this. Let's just think about 100 years. You would be so lucky if you live to be 100, and we all know that. The average life expectancy, let's just say 85 years. Males, it's about 81, and females, it's around 84 to 85 years. But let's just work on 85. Let's be positive here. So 85 years, even that in itself, when you think about 85 years, it seems like a lot, but when we break it down, we actually start to see that 85 years of a life expectancy is not all that much. So let's break that down further. Let's think about this. The first 17 years of our life, we are considered a child, a minor. And so when you think about the first 17 years of your life, when you're going through your primary and your high school, there are decisions being made on your behalf as a child that you don't have control over. So if we take away that amount of time, we're looking at 68 years, all right? So it was 85, now we're down to 68. Because if we get rid of our adolescent years and we think about just our adult life where we are in charge of our decisions, we're talking about having 68 years left, okay? Then if we look at the next part of our life journey where we're sort of settling into maybe some formal education, apprenticeships, to really hone in on our career choices. You might even go through multiple jobs or employments. And so if we take that all away, in the span that it is actually an average that people won't be locked into their careers until they're around 28 years old. So now we're talking that we have 57 years left, okay? So not only have we started with our life expectancy being 85 years, and then we take away our adolescent years where we really don't have control over our decisions and we're obviously growing and developing. And then we go into choosing our career path and maybe going through some jobs and employment. We're looking at 57 years. So you can see how it's getting less and less time as we go along. And of course, these are only average numbers, but some of this might ring true to you. 57 years. Then let's think about this. We spend around a third of our life sleeping. That's right, sleeping. That's why it's super important to have a good mattress, by the way, just saying. But if we consider that a third of our life is spent sleeping, on average 8 to 10 hours a day, and if you're lucky, I mean, not a lot of people would get 8 hours, but still, that's the average. We're now looking at 32 years. 32 years left. And a chunk of that has been spent sleeping, finding a job and securing a lifelong employment opportunity, or maybe changing some, and our adolescence, and knowing that our life expectancy is 85 years old. 32 years. Now it's not seeming like there's that much left, right? 32 years. I mean, I'm nearly 41 years old, and if I think about if I only had 32 years left, wow, it really starts hitting home how precious time really is. So let's think about that. Then the average age for retirement is 65 years old. And when we start thinking about retiring by the time we're 65, we're now down to 19 years. Yes, you heard me correctly. 19 years. That means 19 years where you haven't been an adolescent, where you haven't been searching high and low for a job, where you haven't been sleeping, and you aren't retired. 19 years. That's insane. That is all the time that we have left. So when we think about that picture in the bigger scheme of things, we started with 100 years. Now we're with 19 years left. And when you start seeing time in that perspective, I wonder if you start thinking about some changes that can be made and how you're utilizing your time. Because if someone were to say to me that I only had 19 years to really live my life, and I mean pursue things that I'm passionate about and do things that bring me joy, if someone said you have 19 years, wow, that would really make me mindful of how I'm spending my time. So it's a really important thing that we think about our time and how we're spending it. Now, 19 years in the scheme of things seems very short, but let's just round it up to 20 years. I'll give you an extra year, everyone. That's how nice I am. So 20 years. Let's just think about that as a whole number. It sounds really scary when we say it like that. And think about this further, because I know I mentioned all the other things that are included in that time percentage of sleeping, finding employment, going through your younger years where you're not in charge of your decision making. And then let's include the other things that obviously life includes, such as relationships. And with relationships, that could mean going through some really good relationships and some really poor relationships. That could include marriage, divorce, separation. Those things take up time as well. So when you think about your 20 years, if you're allowing time for those key relationships in your life to occur, sometimes in reality, we lose a bit of time with poor decisions or important decisions that we have to make with regards to relationships. Also think about children and family. When people start their family, that takes up time as well. And it's probably the most important time that you can take up. I went back to work because I had to. We had a mortgage and money was really tight when I was in my younger years, and I didn't have a permanent job. I was looking at contract and relief work for teaching. And so when my children were 9 weeks old, I made the decision to go back in the hope and the effort to get permanency with my teaching career. And it wasn't until I had my second child and went back when he was 9 weeks old that I did secure permanency, because my employer could see how dedicated I was to my job. In hindsight, now at nearly 41, would I go back when my children are 9 weeks old? Hell no. You would not get me to do that in a million years, because I know now with maturity and experiences how precious time is. However, back then, I guess my priorities were a lot different, and work was a priority because money was a priority, because paying bills was our main priority with a young family. But I really urge you to think about time when you're making these decisions, because I can't get back that time that I've lost with my children. And as sad as that is, it's just a reality for not only myself. I know a lot of people out there would be dealing with similar instances. So just think about that time is taken away when our children are growing and they need us, and there's sickness and you get calls at work, come and collect your child, they're sick again, and you just think this is never going to end. But it is honestly the most precious time of all. So always make time for children and your families. Also think about this, throughout our lifetime, we haven't included the fact that we're probably going to have some illnesses or even incidences along the way, accidents that take up a chunk of our time away from us, where it may be that we're healing, we have to go through surgeries, we need time to heal, and you would be really super lucky if you went through your whole lifetime and didn't experience some type of ill health or accident. So thank your lucky stars if you haven't, but the reality is that the majority of us will experience that. And again, it does take away a chunk of our time as well. Also think about, I know I mentioned a portion of our time is taken up with finding and securing employment in our 20s. And on average, like I mentioned before in the video, around the age of 28 is when they say the average person will secure the employment that they're going to stay with until they retire. But that's not really the story for the majority. You'd be really lucky if you got into a career by the time you're 28 and you stayed with that whole career until you're 65 and you had no changes. So we need to allow that in this chunk of time There may be employment changes, and those changes take away our time because obviously you have to upskill and get skilled in a different employment area, and that takes up time as well. So we need to be mindful and realistic, I guess, about we need time to understand that our employment can change throughout our lifetime, and that takes a chunk of our time away as well. Don't forget about this. I know we know the average age for retirement is 65, but that doesn't mean you retire and you're off traveling and you've got all this money in your bank account, you can access your super. We need to think realistically, but that by the time we're 65, we're probably going to start encountering some medical issues. So again, think about the illness issue that you're probably going to have to dedicate some time to dealing with health and sicknesses and accidents and illness. But apart from that, by the time you're 65, your children are adults, and you may even find yourself being a grandparent. And so by the time you're retiring and you're leaving the workforce, most grandparents are suddenly pulled back into the workforce because their children rely so heavily on them for help because times are tough and childcare is super expensive, and that life cycle that our children will need us when we're ready to stop working is a daunting thought, but it is a reality for a lot of people out there that our children will need us. And so we need to be mindful that when we retire, we're probably not going to stop and start doing everything that we want to do. We're going to have to help those nearest and dearest to us as well. And we don't want to say it takes up our time because they're our family. We love them. They need us. We need them. But the reality is we're not going to just retire and get to do whatever we want to do if we have family that needs us around us. So we need to be mindful that our time is going to be spent helping our families grow and evolve when our time is nearing retirement as well. So just a thought, but it's an important thought at that. So in thinking about 20 years, we just need to stop and pause and really let this sink in. 20 years, it is not long. That is 20 Christmases, that's 20 Easters, that's 20 summers, that's 20 winters, 20 autumns, 20 springs, 20 birthdays, 240 months, 1,040 weeks. When you say it like that, it really starts to sink in that time is precious. And when you start prioritizing what's important in your life, knowing and understanding how limited time is in our life, I really hope you start digging deep and decluttering and getting rid of things that don't bring you joy, don't bring you peace, don't bring you happiness, and concentrating on the things that do. And with that, when we talk about our work-life balance, I just cannot stand that word. There should be no balance between work and life. The two of them should not be on the same platform, because in no way, shape or form should work ever be the same priority as your life. So when we think about time and how precious it is, that's our life. And that's what we spend doing what we enjoy. And work is what we should spend paying for to do what we enjoy. If you are lucky enough in your life to have work that brings you joy, you're motivated, you're passionate about it, you are so blessed, because for the majority, work is simply there to fund everything else in our life so that we can live and enjoy elements of our life. And so when we think about a work-life balance, we're talking about working as much as we live and having that balance. And for me, that just doesn't sit right. Your life should far outweigh work. And if it's not, and if you're actually realizing, hey, it does feel like there's a balance and it shouldn't be. My life is more of a priority than my work. Or even worse, what if you start saying to yourself that work is outweighing your life, and you have such an imbalance that you're merely surviving? Then you really need to think about what's happening in your life, your job, the stresses, because if work is taking priority over your life, or even if there's a balance and you're thinking, great, this is great, there's a balance, nope, your life should far outweigh work. And we just need to be mindful of that, because like I said, when I had to return to work when my children were 9 weeks old, that's something that I have a deep guilt about now. I've missed out on time that I will never get back. And when I see all these mums with young children and I see how stressed they are, you know, I can sit back now and say, oh, just enjoy those moments. You'll miss them. They grow up so quick. When someone says that to a parent who's in the thick of it, they're just thinking, oh my goodness, I can't wait for this to be over. But then when time passes on, you just want to go back to those years when your kids are so excited for Christmas and Easter, and yes, there's sickness, there's illness, there's stresses, but you wouldn't change that time for anything. And you really start realizing how precious time is as you get older. And so we just need to always be mindful that we don't want to say there's a work-life balance. There's not. Life is more important. Work is not. Yes, we need to survive. Yes, we need money to survive, but work is not more important than our life. And what I like to say is we need a work-life harmony. And work-life harmony means, yes, you're getting paid to do a job, but you put your priority on your life well before work. And the harmony comes in having systems and processes that allow that to happen. But it's how we move forward, understanding how short time is and appreciating that we can get that work-life harmony happening. And if it's not happening in your current situation, just reevaluate. What is your work bringing to your life? Are you getting out of your life what you wanted to? Do you have goals and aspirations for your life, such as traveling, trips with the family, saving for a home, visiting friends and family, socializing? All of those things that bring you joy and passion to your life are funded by your work. But you need to make sure you're always putting your life first, and your work is merely funding that you can do those things in your life. And that's just where we have that harmony happening, where we've got really good systems and processes in our life. Remember when they tell you when you're on an aeroplane, I know it's, you know, like it's just such a common analogy, but when you really think about it, when they say in an emergency to always put on your oxygen mask before attempting to help someone else, and that is true with life as well. If you don't have a good work-life harmony, you can't really be expected or be able to help someone else in their life when you don't have systems and processes that are currently helping you get that work-life harmony yourself. So in order for you to have a work-life harmony, you need to really sit down and work out what's happening in your situation and what you could possibly make changes in to get a better work-life harmony happening. And then you can help other people. So it's definitely mindful as a parent when we get stressed, and there's so many family stresses that happen in a family situation, but we can't help anyone else until we get our own systems and processes aligned that give us work-life harmony. And so I implore you just to walk away from this video really thinking about what you can do with your own life, your own time. Do you have a work-life harmony happening currently that, yes, you're feeling really good. Yes, you might get stresses here and there, but generally speaking, you get through them and you've got good stability in your life that it really doesn't matter what happens, you can work through it. If you're finding that you've got constant stress, work is outweighing life, you don't have time to socialize, you don't have time for even family gatherings, you don't have time to check in with friends, you don't have time to do things that bring you passion and do your hobbies, or you're not getting towards the goals that you'd set in place, then you really need to stop and evaluate what work you're doing, what can you fix, and see if you can get a better work-life harmony happening for yourself. Because as you've seen in this video, life is short. And if I told you tomorrow that you only had 20 years, would the choices you make today be different than if I hadn't have pointed it out that you only had 20 years? So let's just really stop, pause and think about that, because 20 years is not long. 20 years will fly by, and we really want to look back when we're in our later years and realize I pursued things that I was passionate about. I traveled, I saw friends, I've got a really good, stable network around me, and I utilized my time really well. Wouldn't that be a lovely thought if we could all do that? But unfortunately, the reality is we sort of get to that later part in life, and a lot of people have regrets. We don't want that. So think about your time and how you're spending it and where you can make changes, and just let that sink in for now. Please remember to like and subscribe and share the love, and have a great day, everyone.